What's up, 49er fans? I'm Jason Aponte. A lot to talk about. Steve Wilkes interviews today, Joe Montana's thoughts on the starting quarterback, and Brock Purdy apparently may have avoided Tommy John surgery. Stick around. Welcome, everybody. Let's go, Niners. My name is Jason Aponte. What's up, everyone? I'm Jason Aponte here in my brother's office in Arizona on my way to Media Week right after this for the Super Bowl, waiting for the team. The teams have actually already touched down, but the actual ceremony doesn't begin until I believe it's 6 o'clock Mountain Time, which is 7 o'clock Pacific or something like that. It's 8 o'clock on the East Coast, whatever it is. I'm bad with time zones. Either way, this is why I'm dressed this way and I'm in my brother's office. But real quick, a few things that have come across. Steve Wilkes interviewed today as a defensive coordinator. In terms of, how does this look and what does this mean for the 49ers defense? I think, obviously the 49ers have an elite defense in terms of skill position players and guys who are top end. So there wouldn't really be too much to that. Now the question is scheme. And, a lot of that was discussed with Vic Fangio. A lot of people thought that Vic Fangio would try to just completely revamp things. I think that was a bit overblown just because someone once ran something with a certain personnel doesn't really dictate that he's going to continue with that, especially that he's shown that he's changed and especially against different personnel. So as far as Steve Wilkes, I think people are going to be a little bit surprised at the things that he's going to be able to throw out there for this defense. Sometimes a little bit of 3-3-5. Everything doesn't have to be necessarily 3-4 and 4-3, especially when you think about how less or how unoften you're in base downs just because of how everybody spreads everything out. So Steve Wilkes is a guy who did a tremendous job in Carolina. He's someone who has a ton of respect for players. Jordan Elliott got a chance to talk with Brian Burns during the Pro Bowl, and he glowingly talked about how this is going to work. I implore you guys to read the article on Niners Nation, how it would work with Steve, what type of motivator he is. So he fits right in, and he's going to fit right in with the culture. I mean, the 49ers, whenever they bring in a new coach or they promote somebody, it's always someone of high character and someone who's done a great job. So, yeah, I mean, I would be really excited. I think this is probably your best available option at this point, considering that the defensive coordinator for the Broncos just left for Carolina. That wasn't, he was quick off the market. So Steve Wilkes is a perfect fit, I think. I think that this defense is going to be just as good next year, especially if they make some additions like, I've suggested, on edge, defensive tackle. If they're able to fortify this pass rush, then it's so much easier to do whatever it is that you want on defense when you have everything else locked in with Fred Warner and Greenlaw and Mooney Ward, and hopefully extra steps from Lenore. Maybe Emmanuel Mosley comes back. So as far as continuity goes, I really wouldn't predict any sort of decline. I think that it would just be a little bit of an adjustment in terms of what he's going to run and what he's going to change around. But I do think that he is going to play to the strengths of these players. So yeah, they and Mr. Faithful is right. They shouldn't let him leave the building. I mean, I agree. Like, what's to stop you from wrapping it up? But apparently it was done. So we'll see. I mean, the only other thing that I could think of is that there's someone that we're not thinking about either outside of the building that has been, in the as a coach, or there's, someone else that they're looking to promote. So I think that's the only other thing I could think of. I think as far as outside defensive coordinators, there's not really too many others that you could really pick from. So Steve Wilkes feels like the front runner at this point, but just be aware that there's always probably somebody that we're either not thinking about or we just completely have forgotten about. So shout out to everybody in here. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell for when we go live. I'll probably do a live tomorrow morning after I stir up the pot with these Eagles players and ask questions about what Brandon Ayuk said on Brad's Live. Shout out to Brad, man. An amazing get for Brandon Ayuk. I implore you guys to go watch that video and watch the interview that he did with Brad. Brad getting national recognition. Don't sound local to me, my boy. That's what I'm talking about. So yeah, I'm gonna go ask the Eagles players what they think about what Brandon Ayuk was saying about how they felt like they had something that they were gonna do. So let's see. Callie says, what are you hearing about Chris Kasuri? Callie, honestly, that's a name that has always been there, but he's been asked several times about being a defensive coordinator, and he always continues to say that defensive line, right? There's, I think it was Grant. He posted a video of where he asked him, and he said, yeah, I watched the film and I watched, the secondary and I watch what's going on, but I'm always like glued to defensive line. It's always been that way. It's always been my passion, guys with their hands in the dirt. So sure, that's obviously an option, I think, but I do think that, Chris doesn't necessarily want that. I think he's good where he's at, and I think he has a vital role. I mean, the 49ers identify so many players with qualities and traits that he's able to get the most out of, and the formula is just working. I mean, it continues to work, and I continue to believe that they're going to do that. I think this year they'll do that as well too, and add to the trenches and have people that they can put in good positions to win. So I'm certain that it's an option. I'm just not sure if he really wants to do it. You know, of course he's going to interview and everything, but I think he's spoken a few times talking about how he wants to stay on defensive line. So wouldn't be the worst thing. Wouldn't be the worst thing. So, all right. So Joe Montana, I want to be as respectful as possible because I don't want to downplay Joe Montana. And, you know, the guy was the GOAT before Tom Brady, you know, became the GOAT, right? I think there's nothing more that needs to be said about his play on the field. However, the takes about the quarterback, man, it feels a little bit personal with Joe Montana to the point almost where like he's watching something play out that he saw happen to him. He seems like he identifies with Jimmy Garoppolo, except Joe Montana won rings and Jimmy Garoppolo won games. So I do think that there is a little bit of, I see my own situation playing out with Trey Lance being Steve Young and Jimmy being him. And it just really, the bigger thing is, first of all, you know, bringing Jimmy Garoppolo back would be the worst idea. I mean, even more so than last year, because last year they were able to restructure the deal, but now you're going to have to pay him front end starter money because that's what you're going up against on the market. Like Jimmy Garoppolo is going to make $20+ million this year. It's just a going rate for a quarterback. And he's a starter. I've always maintained that. But that's the worst idea right now. Like right now, and we're going to talk about Brock Purdy's injury and the timetable and everything. Right now, you are rolling into the next season with the cheapest quarterback room and with all of the upside of any quarterback room, right? Probably the highest upside quarterback room because if Trey Lance can be what we think he is or what many people think he is, and Brock Purdy can continue to grow, whoever the starter is going to be extremely effective. Then you take into account how cheap that room is. You know, those are two rookie quarterbacks, right? Like two rookie quarterback contracts. So why on earth would you do something like that? The only way that I would see a veteran quarterback, and it wouldn't be Jimmy Garoppolo coming back because he's going to command too much money, and I guarantee you someone's going to pay him. He's going to be a starter somewhere next year. Houston, the Jets, wherever it is why on earth would you pay someone to come back? And the only other veteran quarterback that it would be somebody in like that, you know, Andy Dalton, Teddy Bridgewater, Jacoby Brissett tier, somebody that you don't want starting extended games or many games in a row, but somebody who in a pinch can do things for you. So I think like that's really where you would go. And that would only happen if Brock Purdy was injured longer, or if he has a setback, or you need just another body in there, right? Like, I don't think that that's really wise at this point. But again, going back to Joe Montana, I think it kind of plays into what we talk about a lot, you know, because when a player says something, you automatically have to give it more credit because he's played the game, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's anything other than an opinion. And sometimes flat out opinions are wrong. Flat out. People give opinions and then they say, well, that's just my opinion. Well, that opinion is wrong. There are opinions that are wrong every single day. There are opinions that are wrong every single day. I hate that whole, well, opinions can't be wrong. Opinions are wrong every day. Like if I told you that Derek Carr is better than Patrick Mahomes, that's a flat out wrong opinion. That is a wrong opinion. Opinions are wrong every single day. So for Joe Montana to kind of exude this like petty behavior and talk about, you know, oh, well, he was handed a team kind of like somebody I know, which I think we know what we're talking about. It's like, how many years later are you still harboring this and holding on to it? You're already the GOAT. Like, it's kind of funny to me that that's still something that's there, but now it's bled into his takes. So sure, you give a player more credit. You give a player more credit and they deserve that because they played the game. But that doesn't necessarily mean that their word is gospel. I mean, there's people that have never played the game that can give more informed takes and back up their arguments logically. But this whole idea that just because he played and just because he was at the top of his level, oh, you got to listen to him. Well, he said it, then it's got to be gold. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And I don't think that's true. I think there's plenty of players, and I think we watch people on national media. There's plenty of players that have played the game, played it at a high level, and say the stupidest shit you ever heard in your life. The dumbest shit. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean one way or another. Like, again, you give a player more credit for his opinion because he's played, but it's not like his word is gold. And because he's Joe Montana, everybody's always talking about like, oh, you know, it's the GOAT. When the GOAT talks, you listen. Yeah, well, Jerry Rice had a wrong opinion about how Jimmy Garoppolo got injured as well. Should we just forget facts and just because Jerry Rice said it? Like, I'm equal opportunity with this. If you're a player and you have an opinion and it's wrong, I'm going to call you out on it. I don't care who it is. I don't care who it is. And there's plenty of players that have wrong takes. Everybody has wrong takes. Everybody has wrong opinions. But just because someone played and they're the GOAT, that doesn't necessarily just mean, well, whatever he said is true, even if it's the most off the wall shit. Like if he said, bring back Tim Tebow, would you guys be sitting there like, oh man, well, Joe said it, man, you got to bring back Tebow? It's the weirdest thing about how players go. But again, back to Joe, it's just more, why are you still harboring this pettiness and this hate for all of this? And it's just weird to me, in my opinion, that all these years later, he still continues to identify with a guy that he shouldn't identify with because he's never done any of the things that Joe's done. He just identifies with the situation. So he continues to push the whole Jimmy Garoppolo thing. Listen, Purdy and Lance that next year and just a practice squad guy, not Josh Johnson, and roll with it because they're the cheaper room. And again, they have a higher upside than any other quarterback room in the league at this point because of the two guys and what they can do. So it's strange to me to hear Joe Montana go on Mike Silver's podcast and continue to hammer home this Jimmy Garoppolo needs to come back, considering his price point. Like his price point is going to be upwards of $20-25 million, higher than that sometimes, because that's the going rate for a quarterback. I mean, for God's sakes, Derek Carr almost makes 40 M's a year, right? And I think we all can agree that Derek Carr is like in the middle, like he's a mid-tier quarterback, but that's not even one of the higher tier guys. It's just the going rate for the quarterback. So again, one, you can't bring him back because of the money. And two, why would Jimmy Garoppolo want to come back? Just to do it again for another year and hold the place for somebody else? Like it's stupid. I just found it weird that Joe Montana continues to like grind this axe all these years later. It happens. Everybody gets replaced. You got replaced. Brett Favre gets replaced. Everybody gets replaced. Everyone gets replaced. It's just strange to me that you continue to take shots at Steve Young and kind of just use this situation as a platform to bring up old feelings that you still haven't dealt with at this point. Not taking anything away from him. GOAT quarterback, GOAT 49ers quarterback. He's up there. Cool. That opinion was wrong, and opinions are wrong every single day. That's my rant on Joe Montana. So 12 minutes in, not that many people in here. I think Brad's live, so that makes sense. You guys will come on over and watch this after his live, and that makes sense. Make sure you guys go over there and show Brad some love. But like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell for when we go live. Definitely on my way in a little while to the convention center downtown Phoenix. Going to ask some questions to the Eagles, stir the pot a little bit about the 49ers, see what kind of good comments we get. Hopefully we get some other players that are walking around that I'm able to speak to. So yeah, I mean, it's a fun time to at least be out here. I mean, there was a press conference this morning where they're kind of kicking off the week this week because the teams have already landed 6 o'clock Mountain Time, whatever it is. They're actually going to start that. It'll be on NFL Network where you'll get to watch them walk in. We'll all get to talk with them, all of those things. And then they had a press conference today to kind of kick all that off. And who was it? What's his name? Larry Fitzgerald was there. There's a bunch of players just walking around. There's a lot of electricity in Phoenix right now because of the Super Bowl. I got to say, man, too, being out here and watching 49er fans are all over the place here. They are all over the place. I saw a guy walking around with a Michael Crabtree jersey. I saw a guy walking around with a Justin Smith jersey. Like, the season is over for the 49ers, but it never stops with this fan base, man. I got to give you credit. You guys travel everywhere, man. You're in a place where it should be the Cardinal stuff, and then you probably think it's going to be Chiefs and Eagles. I saw a few Chiefs and Eagles fans, but I saw way more 49ers fans. Like, these guys are out here just going crazy, man, at this point. So, yeah, so Brock Purdy. So, according to Matt Mayoko, he says that Brock Purdy has avoided the Tommy John surgery, which we know is the dreaded 12-month timeline, meaning he would be out for this entire year. Then it would be Trey Lance and, whoever they would get to fill in. That's when we go back to the discussion about like Andy Dalton, Jacoby Brissett, those kind of guys that are just going to be there to fill in. But Brock Purdy, it sounds like, has avoided that. So now this puts him on the 6-month timeline. And if you guys watch the video that I had with Dr. Narav Panja, if you haven't, you should definitely check it out. There's a ton of great information about what the timelines, recovery, and what to expect going forward. It sounds like the timeline that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch outlined at the end of their press conference, with 3 months that he'll be able to throw again, 3 more months makes it 6 months, and then boom, he'll be fine. Like, his arm will be back to normal, provided that there's no setbacks. Remember, this surgery is not going to be reconstruction, which is what the Tommy John surgery is, meaning they would have to take a tendon from somewhere else in his body to completely restructure it. With this, they're going to put a little brace in there to kind of hold it together, and it'll strengthen itself through rehab and all of those things as well too, and it'll put itself back together. Same kind of thing that Nick Mullins had. But this really just means that barring any setbacks, barring any problems with the surgery, barring any other extra surgery that might be needed, it's going to be Brock Purdy and Trey Lance. And I think this is a great situation for both guys. And I want you guys to hear me out because, all year I've been telling you, hey, we'll talk about this when it's time. Well, it's time. It's definitely time to talk about this now, especially if Matt Mayoko's report is correct. Well, here's Trey Lance, right? Trey Lance is going to get a shot, and he's going to now get a chance to develop, be the guy, take all the reps, right? Early on through OTAs, all that stuff, minicamp, no issues there. Like he can just go ahead and work on those things. And then Brock Purdy is going to be allowed to be brought along, and it sounds like it'll be a competition in camp. And I think that's great. There's a lot of people that say that two quarterbacks, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. I don't believe that to be true, especially when you consider the 49ers situation and how frequently they have to play other quarterbacks. You have two quarterbacks right now that they both have room to grow, the both of them, Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. I hate this idea that people say that, Brock Purdy, what he showed you in those 8 games can't be improved upon. Like, I think that's weird. And I also think that anybody who's in the league 3, 4, 5 years down the line also has room to grow. You continue to grow. Like, you never peak, right? You don't want to peak. You want to continue to add to your bag. So I do think that this is kind of an advantageous situation for both quarterbacks. At this point, Trey Lance can go out there. He can take all the reps. He can learn. He can do all the mental reps. He can build rapport with the team and show, right? Like, try to get an early lead in this quarterback competition. And then Brock's allowed to be brought back along however he is. And then they can just duke it out right there in training camp, and may the best quarterback win at this point. So again, for a lot of people who are like, well, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one. I don't think that's true, especially in the case of the 49ers. I think that they're going to be able to, make each other better and also put themselves in positions where, like, if one of them does get injured, what you have in the other as well too. So this is a really good opportunity for Trey Lance to have this entire time to himself. Learn, grow, build rapport with receivers, work on the things that he needs to work on. I think this is a great opportunity for him at this point. I think it's a great opportunity for Purdy to come back slowly, not have to be rushed back, and still not feel like the weight of the world is on his shoulders if he can't come back in time, because you still have somebody who potentially can be very good in Trey Lance. Now, this all ties into kind of can this team afford to wait around for Trey Lance to? And I do think that while I love the pick of Trey Lance, I do think he was thrown into a bad situation. He just was. And I do think this is a little bit of the arrogance of Kyle Shanahan. Yes, shocker, guys. I have criticism for Kyle Shanahan as well, too. He's not perfect. Kyle Shanahan's arrogance got the best of him in this situation. He thought that he could tightrope developing Trey Lance with a win-now roster. And he thought that he could just navigate it and he was going to find a way to get that done. He did not account for all the bumps and bruises that happened as this went along, right? I mean, not the injuries, not the physical injuries, but the growth that you needed to see from Trey Lance, right? Like, we understand he had limited reps. He had not played much football. So I was prepared for a guy who you see the flashes, but you're going to have moments where you're like, you remember, yes, this young man hasn't played a lot of football. But Kyle Shanahan definitely kind of blew this one, in my opinion, because he believed that he could tightrope developing Lance while putting a win now roster out there and not wasting the last few years of certain guys. Like Trent Williams doesn't have time to sit around and be, like developing a guy or anything like that. They've got to maximize the high-end talent that they have while they're still high-end talent. And that was the tightrope that he kind of walked. So when you hear reports, I don't know if those are true, but when you hear reports about the Rams and they go into you hear reports that the team doesn't. I only said that because marketing pros in here. Thanks, bro. You threw me off. When you see reports that the team wasn't behind him, I don't know if that's true, but I do think that there has to be some uneasiness in that locker room with the vets and the guys who want to win right away. And it's just a bad position right now. Generally, when you're drafting from the 3rd spot, you're a team that's not very good. You're a team that got there because of your record. You're a team that's basically building everything from the ground up. So you could take the bumps and bruises with a quarterback if you throw him in there and start him right away because you're trying to rebuild everything. The 49ers got to 3, but they had a win-now roster. So it's kind of weird. It's not the same exact dynamic, right? Like the Jacksonville Jaguars, they take Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence goes out there his first year. It's up and down, but that's fine because they're building, right? Like they're not in a position to compete, right? They're not in any of that. Now in year 2, they make the playoffs because they got a good coach. They made some additions. They're starting to gel. Trevor Lawrence took a jump. That's kind of usually how it goes, not a team that's win now and then throw Trey Lance in there. So I do feel bad for the kid. I do feel like he's been put in a position of, you have to develop at light speed. this team doesn't have time for you to wait around, for like 2-3 years for you to get better. And I think that that's really hard for Lance. And I do think that that's the wrong way to do it. So again, kind of Kyle Shanahan's arrogance here at this point with this quarterback move and moving up to 3 kind of got the best of him at this point. So that's my spiel on Trey Lance. Again, he's going to have all the opportunity to grow, to lead, to build rapport with all these guys while Brock Purdy's coming along. But the good news is Brock Purdy's not going to be gone for the year. Sounds like he'll be back in training camp at this point. So for me, it's just everybody wants to get upset because you're like, oh, you have to name a starter, all of those things. No, you just play it out, made the best quarterback win. A lot of people have hard stances. I want the quarterback that's going to win the Super Bowl. And whoever that is, whether that's Trey Lance or Brock Purdy, I don't care. In my opinion, I don't care, but I would love to see Trey Lance kind of shut everybody up, right? I start to root for guys when everybody goes against him and everybody's counted him out. I start to root for guys like that just because based on that, like I love proving people wrong. I think that's a highly motivating thing. And I would love for Trey Lance to do that because there's a lot of people that have just written this kid off and he hasn't even played much. But I do feel for him in this situation. I do think that this was absolutely the wrong place for him because of this tightrope that they tried to walk about winning and not letting him develop. He should have been given the same leeway that Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence and all those guys to develop and play and not have to worry about, well, you're going to cost us the playoffs or we're not going to be in the NFC Championship again. It's just something that when you're usually at 3, you're not this good of a team. So I do feel for Trey Lance immensely about that. I do think that was a bit of a tough situation for him. But I do understand that the kid is very headstrong. He is very smart. He's very confident. And he's also very mature. So he's going to say all the right things. He's going to do all the right things. And he's going to have an opportunity this training camp. I think this is going to be one of the most fun training camps to come up on. And you're going to get to watch both of these young men compete. And I think the 49ers are in a great spot. But I do feel for Trey Lance just a little bit. I've kind of had that on my mind for a while. And I wanted to make sure I said it. So 22 minutes in. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. I am here in Phoenix on my way to media week, so I can start stirring the pot with the Eagles. I'm going to start asking questions to the Chiefs and the Eagles, and hopefully we get some good sound bites and get some Eagles people to respond to Brandon Ayuk, who said that they kind of were about to expose something. And when you kind of watch that play where Brock Purdy got injured, he was running wide open. And if Purdy bangs that on him, that's not only – it might have been a touchdown, but it's probably a big play. So it's going to be interesting to hear what they have to say when it comes to that. So, and you know what? Let me take this one actually. There's something about Trey Kyle just doesn't like. I'm not sure. I'll tell you this. It's so weird, right? Like he wants a guy who can be off script at times and save him and scramble and kind of use him as dual threat. But man, like watching him with Brock Purdy, you can automatically tell that he loves that style of football much more. He felt much more confident with his play calls. He felt like he can do way more with his offense. He felt like he was, putting his foot on the gas finally. Like, and with Trey, there's just like this indecision with him. So I'm not certain that it's like something that he doesn't like. I just know that he prefers what Brock Purdy does. I think that like it's just a tough situation. I feel for Trey Lance, man. I really do. Let's see. Gammon said, once upon a time, fans wanted to get rid of Jimmy Ward due to injuries, but he overcame it. Kinlaw's in a similar situation. Will he overcome it? Yeah, I mean, I do think that he's going to have every opportunity, right? Go through this offseason, not be injured, be a little bit more motivated. It's hard, man. You can't nitpick like those plays like that happened in the NFC Championship game. The guy was just on his way back from working back. So will he overcome it? I don't know. He has a very good chance, and I wouldn't doubt it. They would love to have that because the 49ers really lack pass rush down the stretch from their defensive tackles outside of Eric Armstead. Like, they need more. If Javon Kinlaw is not going to give that to them, I implore them to look at Daron Payne, maybe pay him a little bit more. I understand that he's going to have more of a market. He deserves to be paid more, and that's, going to be hard to do under the cap, especially when you have to sign a bunch of guys. But, if they could get something out of Javon Kinlaw, it would be huge. Will he overcome it? I'm not sure, but he'll have a great chance to do it, I think, at this point. So, yeah, it's tough. I mean, you don't want to write players off. They always hear all that stuff. They're motivated. They hear all that, right? Like what happened in that game, it looked like he was getting pushed around. And then you look at, what Eric Armstead said, it was more of a technique thing, and it wasn't necessarily something like him just getting pulled around. Like he just was off of his technique. And I hope that's true. I'm not going to pretend like I'm smarter than I know. The film looks like one way, But I believe Eric Armstead when he says it, and that's a good teammate of him to do it. But yeah, if they can get something from Javon Kinlaw, it would be huge. I mean, they really were lacking down the stretch from anybody besides Nick Bosa, like on the edge too. Like they have to revamp this defensive line and get them rolling again because that's going to be the crux of how this defense is going to, perform. So it's something I don't want to write them off for, but it's not also a good start, right? Like we're in year three now, three or four, right? Like, and I mean, it's always going to be hindsight when people say, well, we could have had Tristan Wirfs, all those things. I mean, you can do that for every single draft, but Javon Kinlaw needs to start going, like needs to start getting it together. And he's going to have, if he has a full off season where he's not injured and he doesn't have to rehab and he can just focus on football in terms of refining his technique and continuing to work, then I don't see why he wouldn't. But to like automatically say he will, I don't know about that. I really don't, because circumstances change and just players a little bit different. Yeah, man. And Deron Payne's a baller. It's just the problem is he's young and he's really good. So he's going to command a market, right? Like this isn't bargain bin, diving for a defensive tackle. Like Payne is a baller. Like he is really good, man. And he's young. So you look at him and you say that's an instant fit, right? Like put him right next to Armstead and go. But he's going to command quite a salary, and he deserves it because he's very good. So can the 49ers make it work? Who leaves, right? I wrote an article I think it's going to come out on Niners Nation if it's not today or tomorrow about Azeez Al-Shaair. I don't think Azeez is coming back, but that's not somebody who was signed for big money. Now, does Jimmy Ward leave? Does Mike McGlinchey leave? Do they bring back Mosley? If they lose all three of those guys, then I would think that you would have to prioritize defensive line again because you're going to need to get to the quarterback because you're taking a step back and losing Mosley, even though Lenore played fabulous down the stretch, especially in the playoffs. But Deron Payne would be somebody that, if this defense got him, match him up with Chris Kasurik and watch this defense go crazy, man. Like it would be help for Bosa in the middle, guys that will occupy blocks, give him more one-on-one situations, and just a guy who's an overall stud and a young guy. So I would love to have Deron Payne, but he is going to get the bag, and rightfully so because he's very good. I mean, but that is an obvious fit for the 49ers, but he's going to have quite a few suitors at this point. So it's hard. The 49ers do need more from the defensive tackle position. They just do. Outside of Eric Armstead, Kevin Gibbons in stretches is good. He's not. He's a rotational player. He's not necessarily somebody who can be there down after down. That's what they thought they were getting with Javon Kinlaw. So Kinlaw's going to have a whole offseason to work on his technique. Refine his technique, get better, get stronger, because he doesn't have to rehab if he's healthy. So that's really, this is it. This is his make or break year. Like this is it for him. Like he's going to really have to show something. Otherwise, the 49ers are going to have some tough conversations about what they do with him. And they've showed that they'll move on from players regardless of the draft capital. T.Y. McGill was good too as well. I think T.Y. McGill was very good as well. Again, rotational players, but it would be so good to have a set and forget defensive tackle like Deron Payne. And then if you need to give him a breather, you have Kevin Gibbons, you have McGill. At times you can put Omenihu in there and move him inside a little bit further. Yeah, like it would be great. It would be great to have that set and forget thing. Like it would be Payne, Armstead, Bosa, and maybe if they bring back Ebukam, then Ebukam. But I think that would be great, man. Maybe Drake Jackson, takes a leap. I think he's due for that as well. Kyle Shanahan kind of talked about him hitting the rookie wall and not being where he needed to be at a certain point. So that's the reason that he was inactive. He just lost a little bit of juice at that point. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's a tough league. But if you do get what you get out of Drake Jackson, then you should be fine. Let's see. Is Jason Verrett coming back? I don't know. I mean, it's hard. I'll always advocate for the guy, right? It depends on how bad he wants it because he knows he has to do the same thing that he's done up 2 other times and rehab and be, and be back. Like it's hard. It's really, really hard to do that. Can the 49ers afford to keep doing that? I mean, it's not really going to cost them money. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's going to be tough to bring him back. The dream scenario for me is you bring back Mosley, and you move Lenore to the slot. And you can, run Ward on the other side. I think you're good right there. And then if, God forbid, something happens to one of the corners, that Lenore has done enough to show you that he can still be productive and you can move. And if not, let's just say Mosley doesn't come back. I think a person that they could target is James Bradbury for a 1-year deal. He's 31, so he won't command such a market. Still played at a high level this year, second team All-Pro. guy who it can cover. I don't know how the Giants just let him walk to the Eagles for nothing. A 1-year deal for him, and you can put Lenore back in the slot as well too. So a lot of options for them to be flexible, but best case scenario is for them to bring Mosley back because he was having an incredible season and he's just continued to get better every single year. So he's still training at the facility. If you heard John Lynch talk, so he's still there and he's still working out. So, but with the Verrett thing, if he wants to come back for a nothing deal and prove it, maybe that's something the 49ers explore. But at this point, it might be prudent to just, move on and see if someone else wants to take that chance. I hate it for him, man. I loved when Verrett was balling. So, let's see. Tavarius says, I thought the 49ers had a Super Bowl roster and could win with any quarterback. Apparently not Trey. Well, I mean, I think that narrative kind of came up this year, just because they had four or five, quarterbacks this year, right? And they won so many games. I think that narrative kind of just jumped up because of how many people play quarterback. I think that's something that happened over the year. I wouldn't say that they could win with any quarterback. Obviously, they can't. They can't win with Josh Johnson. So I mean, I wouldn't say that. But I do think that that's a popular sentiment now just because of the 12 game winning streak. I don't subscribe to it, but yes, the draft is in Kansas City this year, which I'll be at as well too. I heard Kansas City's got some really good food too. So if you guys know any barbecue spots or anything like that, let me know. I'd love to check that out as well too. Not as glamorous as Vegas, last year the draft, but is what it is. It'll be a fun time, I think. It's gonna be cold out there, isn't it? Right? Like March, April, right? When is the draft? April? Yeah, it's still probably cold over there, right? It's not like Vegas. It was hot in Vegas, man. So. All right, 30 minutes in, almost 100 people in here. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. I'll be at the media session today for the Chiefs and the Eagles. Going to ask some nice questions to the Eagles, get them all a little riled up about Brandon Ayuk. So follow me on Twitter. You'll see the videos on there. I'm going to get out of here. 30 minutes is good. Kind of highlighted everything. Steve Wilkes is the guy that interviewed today for the defensive coordinator position. Hope that he stays. Joe Montana's wilding for his Jimmy Garoppolo take. And Brock Purdy is going to be back within that 6-month timeline, it sounds like, according to Matt Mayoko. So have a great night, 49ers fans. Enjoy your time or your Monday, right? Today's Monday. God, I traveled on a Sunday and I lost the time zones, everything. I could have swore Arizona was Pacific time, but it's Mountain time. But shout out to you guys for tuning in. Make sure you go show Brad some love as well, too. Make sure you watch his video with Brandon Ayuk. It was great. And make sure you watch the video that I posted with Dr. Narav Panja about Brock Purdy so you can learn a little bit more about the timetable now that we have an idea of what it is, because if Matt Mayoko was saying it, probably good information. So I'm out of here, guys. Have a great night. Let's go Niners. Welcome, everybody. Let's go Niners. My name is Jason Aponte.